The little girl said, "My real father is in the well." 20 years later, they dug it up. And hello, everyone. Enjoy these relaxing moments while you watch. Mrs. Eleanor was tidying up the living room while Mr. Robert sat reading the newspaper, black-framed glasses perched firmly on his nose. Little Sophia, only 4 years old, played alone on the carpet holding a homemade wooden doll, murmuring, "I want my real dad. My real dad is down the well." Eleanor paused, turning her head to look at her. "What did you just say, Sophia?" The girl didn't answer immediately. Her eyes stared toward the window, as if drawn into the void outside. "You said your real dad is down the well," Sophia repeated more clearly this time. "I remember now. He was wearing a blue shirt. He fell." Robert burst out laughing. "Kids always making up silly stories." "Robert, don't say that in front of her." Eleanor frowned. "She's still little. If she sees something strange, we should pay attention." "See what? Don't make a big deal out of it. She probably heard some ghost story somewhere and is copying it." Sophia stood up, looking straight at Eleanor. "Mom, I remember my real dad's hair was longer than yours. He used to hug me and whistle tunes, but you don't have any whistles." Eleanor froze. She had never taught Sophia a single tune. Since adopting her from the orphanage in Oak Ridge County a year ago, she had tried her best to treat her like her own. She swallowed hard. "Sophia, you're a good girl. Don't talk nonsense, okay?" she said gently. "Living with Mommy Eleanor and Daddy Robert is enough. I just want my real dad. The one down the well," Sophia whispered again. The next day, Eleanor brought up the matter with Patricia, her longtime neighbor and friend. They were having tea under the old oak tree, the chirping of sparrows filling the air. "She said that line 3 times now." Eleanor lowered her voice. "Keep saying her real dad is down a well. I'm starting to get scared." Patricia clicked her tongue. "I told you kids from orphanages, many of them aren't quite right. Growing up with nothing, witnessing who knows what. I used to volunteer there. One little boy even claimed the ghost stole his boots." "But her eyes, Patricia." Eleanor shook her head. "Sometimes when I look into her eyes, it feels like she's not a child." "Don't be superstitious. Maybe she overheard someone talking about the old well behind your house. No one has mentioned the well since we redid the garden. The old well has been almost completely covered. The girl has never gone back there alone." Patricia frowned. "I have a bad feeling. If it were me, I'd take her to a psychologist, just for peace of mind." That night, Sophia sat on the floor drawing. She used a blue crayon to completely color the shirt of a man in her picture. Eleanor walked in, watching for a moment. "Who is this, sweetheart?" "My real dad," Sophia replied without looking up. "Why is he wearing blue?" "Because that's what he wore when he fell before falling into the well." "I was there," I cried, but no one heard. "Sophia, you saw that happen?" The girl nodded. Eleanor felt a chill run through her. She took a step back, eyes fixed on the drawing. The lines were crude but full of emotion. A man falling, hair flying, and a deep black hole representing the well in the center of the page. A week later at Ethan's house, Robert's cousin and a member of the town council, Robert was drinking beer with him. "You heard what Eleanor said about the girl?" Ethan asked, opening his second can. "Yeah, some nonsense about the well and her real dad. People around town are starting to talk, saying, 'It's no wonder you ended up with a kid like that.'" Robert shrugged. "The kid's got issues, so what? She'll forget when she grows up." "Are you sure?" Ethan leaned back in his chair, his gaze sharp. "Kids often say things adults don't want to hear, and sometimes they're telling the truth." Robert turned to look at Ethan, a flash of caution in his eyes. "What's that supposed to mean?" Ethan smiled. "Nothing, just curious. Oh, by the way, that old well behind your house still there, right?" "Don't dig up old stories," Robert said through gritted teeth. Ethan nodded slowly, then changed the subject. One morning, Eleanor took Sophia for a walk through the town square. An old shoe vendor leaned in to whisper to a woman beside her. "That's the girl, the one who talks to the dead." The other woman clucked her tongue. "Eleanor's a fool," took in a child no one wanted. Both of them snickered, unaware that Eleanor was standing behind them, hearing every word. She gripped Sophia's hand tighter. Sophia looked up. "Mom, they don't believe me." Eleanor said nothing. "But I remember when my real dad cried. I was sleeping. Then I woke up. I heard a noise. I ran out to the yard, but I only saw Daddy Robert coming out alone." Eleanor froze. "How do you remember that?" "I don't know. It's just in my head. Every night. That night, Eleanor confronted Robert. "Do you know what the girl said?" "She said she saw you out in the yard alone, the night her real father disappeared." Robert laughed. "You're going to believe that little brat over me." "I don't know anymore. But the more she talks, the more I feel something isn't right. You said she was an orphan a friend brought to you. But I never met that friend. And her adoption papers, they're so vague." Robert slammed his glass on the floor. "Eleanor, don't you dare go there." Sophia stood by the door listening to everything. She didn't cry. She just watched them, her gaze cold. Another night, Eleanor woke up from a nightmare. She saw Sophia standing by the window, staring out at the backyard. "Sophia." She turned around and whispered, "Dad's crying." "I hear him down in the well." "No, sweetheart. It's just a dream." "It's not. I see it." "Daddy," Robert holding a shovel. Daddy begged him, but he pushed him. He fell. I screamed, but no one heard. No one. Eleanor clutched her chest. Cold sweat trickled down her back. In that moment, she could no longer deny that a certain truth was pounding at the door of her mind, a truth she had ignored for too long. "Sophia, look at Mommy." "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking my real dad is waiting for me." Eleanor put down her spoon. She had just finished setting breakfast. Sophia sat frozen in front of her cereal bowl, not eating, not blinking. That stare made her shiver. "You know, Mommy and Daddy love you very much." "Please don't say those things anymore." "You're not my real mom," Sophia said quietly, her voice even. "My real dad is the one I see every night in a blue shirt, long hair, reaching out." Eleanor swallowed hard. "Enough. Eat your breakfast." "I hear him crying beneath the ground. I remember the well was so cold." He fell and couldn't scream. Robert entered, tossing the newspaper onto the table. "Still going on? She's having another one of her fits, isn't she?" Eleanor said softly. "Don't raise your voice. I'm sick of it, Eleanor. He keeps repeating that crazy stuff. The well, the blue shirt, the real dad. You spoil her too much," Robert roared, slamming his hand on the table, making the dishes rattle. Sophia didn't flinch. She merely tilted her head, regarding Robert like a stranger. "You don't want me to talk about my real dad because you're the one who pushed him down, right?" Sophia asked bluntly. "Shut up." Robert lunged, raising his hand. Eleanor rushed between them, pushing Sophia behind her. "Robert, no! Kids need to learn to stay silent when adults are talking. You're going to hit her." "I can't believe this." Robert froze, his eyes bloodshot. A minute passed in silence. Sophia breathed evenly, her gaze never wavering. "You hit it, but I dream about it. Every time I sleep, I see Daddy fall. He didn't want to, but you pushed." Eleanor trembled, turning around. "Sophia, why are you saying this? You don't remember anything before you came here. You were only 4, but I remember how it felt when Daddy fell. The cold wind, the screaming, the pain, I saw it." Robert grabbed his coat and stormed out of the house in anger. The next day, Eleanor took Sophia to the town psychological clinic. Dr. Lydia Hayes, who had worked with many trauma cases in children, sat across from them. "Sophia, can you tell me about what you dream?" she asked gently. Sophia stared at the pen on her desk, then said, "I don't dream. I remember." "Remember what?" "My dad wearing a blue shirt, being pushed into the well behind the house. It was dark. I couldn't scream." Daddy Robert stood there. Dr. Hayes took notes. She turned to Eleanor. "Mrs. Eleanor, does this happen often?" "Almost every week," Eleanor answered softly. "Sometimes she even wanders the garden at night, talking to herself." Lydia turned back to Sophia. "You see your real dad often?" "Yes, every time I'm sad. He waves at me, but his hands are covered in mud." "Do you see him in your mind or with your eyes?" "I don't know. It's like there's a voice whispering in my ear, soft like the wind." After the session, Lydia asked Eleanor to stay behind. "You need to prepare yourself. This isn't a normal symptom. The child seems to have fragmented memories and a deep belief that her biological father was murdered. It could be a sign of dissociative disorder following trauma, but she's only 4 years old. How could she remember something from when she was an infant?" The brain of a child is mysterious. Some sensory memories remain even if we can't understand them. If what the girl says is true, Lydia paused. Eleanor asked, "Do you think she witnessed a crime?" "I can't conclude that yet, but her eyes are different, like she's no longer a child." On the way home, Sophia stayed silent the whole ride. Eleanor glanced at her through the rearview mirror. "Sophia, are you mad at Mommy?" "No, but I know you're scared of me." Eleanor didn't know how to respond. A few days later, Patricia came over again. She brought some slices of cake. Sophia was playing in her room. The two women sat in the kitchen. "Do you know how she looks at me?" Eleanor whispered, like I owe her an answer. Patricia set down her teacup. "Have you talked to Robert?" "No, but I'm starting to doubt that." "Well, we sealed it up the first year we moved in. I never thought about it again." Patricia frowned. "Eleanor, you need to be careful. If the girl is right, you think Robert could have done something like that?" Patricia remained silent. That night, Sophia had another dream. Soaked in sweat, she jolted awake and turned on the light. Mom, no answer. But from a distance, she heard soft moaning. The wind howled past the window. Sophia got up, walked out to the balcony and looked out at the garden. The spot where the old well had been was overgrown with grass, but something was moving. "Real Dad," she whispered. The next morning, she drew a new picture. A man half buried in the ground, still reaching out his hand. Eleanor saw the drawing and turned pale. Sophia no longer went to kindergarten. Other parents protested because the girl scares my kid. She talks about dead bodies and blood. She looks at my kid with empty eyes. The school suggested she be temporarily homeschooled. One day, the neighborhood leader, Mr. Frank Harlan, came knocking. "Mrs. Eleanor, I don't mean any harm, but lately, people around here are getting scared." "Scared of what?" "Of the well. Of the girl." Some said they heard her whispering to herself at midnight, then found small footprints around the well in the morning. No one dares go into the yard anymore. "Mr. Harlan, please don't exaggerate. We just want safety. You should take the girl somewhere else. Don't let her affect the whole neighborhood." Eleanor shut the door and turned around. Sophia was standing on the stairs quietly listening to everything. That night, Robert was drinking alone. Eleanor came and handed him a piece of paper. "It's a copy of Sophia's adoption file. I asked Lydia to help find it. There's something wrong." Robert glanced at it, then tossed the paper onto the table. "I don't know what you're trying to get at. The intermediary's name is Miguel Esteban. I went to the address listed, but the place was demolished back in 2008, meaning the file is fake. So what? Sophia isn't just an anonymous orphan. I'm starting to think she's your biological child with someone else." Robert shot to his feet. "Enough." Eleanor stepped back. "She talks about the man in the blue shirt, about you pushing him into the well." "Robert, you know what happened, don't you?" "Shut up." Sophia upstairs pressed her eyes against the crack of the door, her small fists clenched tightly. The next day, Sophia grabbed some paper and wrote a small note. She tucked it into her pocket and left the house. Her destination, the town office. Ethan was working there. "Uncle Ethan." "Oh, Sophia, you came here alone. I need your help. You know the well behind my house, right?" Ethan nodded. "I think there's a body down there." "My real dad." Ethan sat up straight. "What did you say?" "I'm not joking. I want to ask permission to dig up the well, but I need your help." Ethan took the note Sophia handed him. On it was a drawing of the backyard with a big red X marking the well's location. At the bottom, in scribbled handwriting, it said, "Real Dad is here. You'll have to stay here for a few days, Sophia," Eleanor said, gripping the girl's hand tightly. "The doctors will take care of you. Mommy and Daddy will come get you soon." "I don't like this place," Sophia mumbled, looking at the white walls of St. Mary's Children's Center. "It's okay, sweetheart. You'll feel better soon." A man in a white coat approached, kneeling down with a smile. "Hello, Sophia. I'm Dr. Edward. I'll be your new friend for a few weeks." "I don't need a new friend. I need my real dad." Eleanor stifled a sigh. She exchanged a look with Dr. Edward, then quickly walked toward the main gate. As the iron door closed behind her, the words, "My real dad is down the well," still echoed in her head. In the therapy room the next morning, Edward sat facing Sophia, flipping open a notebook. "You see the man in the blue shirt every day?" Sophia nodded. "Can you describe him?" "He has long brown hair, very sad eyes. He waves at me, but his mouth can't open. I think it's because of all the mud covering him." Edward nodded. "When you say he's down the well, what do you see?" "I see faint light, water, but mostly darkness. I see his hair floating. He's crying, but no one hears." "Do you think Daddy Robert is involved?" "I don't think, I know." On the third day, Sophia began refusing to eat. When Nurse Andrea brought her a meal tray, she just sat there staring out the window. Sophia, you have to eat something. No, every time I eat, I hear the moaning from under the floor. Andrea frowned. What did you say? Someone's trapped under the ground. My real dad. I hear him calling Sophia, Sophia every night. Andrea returned to the nurse's station. The girl keeps rambling like she's possessed. One morning, Dr. Edward took Sophia into the observation room. In the room were a doll wearing a blue shirt and a small black rock. Sophia, which one reminds you of your real dad? Without hesitation, she pointed to the doll. My dad used to wear a shirt like that. Where did you see him wearing it? When he was pushed into the well. Edward glanced toward the mirrored window, where chief psychologist Dr. Agnes Foster was observing. The girl reacts strongly to symbolic images. I think we should increase her citalopram to 5 me, Dr. Foster said into the intercom. During the second week, Sophia began having mild seizures at night. A nurse found her lying on the floor scratching at the ground. Cold. The dirt is cold. The earth is covering Daddy. I can't breathe. They gently sedated her. Sophia fell into a deep sleep for 6 hours. When she woke up, she stared at the ceiling. I went down there. Down where? Edward asked. The well. Eleanor visited after 2 weeks. A nurse brought her to the waiting room. Mrs. Eleanor, I have to be honest. The girl isn't improving. She still talks about the man in the well, and lately she started sleepwalking. Yes, we once found her standing in the courtyard staring at a drain cover, whispering, Daddy, are you cold? Eleanor put her hand to her forehead. I don't know what to do. Are you sure nothing ever happened to her biological father? No, I only know Robert brought her home. Then do you believe her? Eleanor didn't answer. In the third week, Dr. Foster ordered a brain scan for Sophia. There might be abnormal activation in her memory-related areas, she told Edward. I've never seen a child create such a detailed internal world. The scans showed nothing abnormal. But when they tried stimulating the auditory cortex with the sound of dripping water, Sophia started trembling violently. I see Daddy sinking. What did you say? Edward asked. Dad couldn't float. Mud all over him. So I screamed, but Daddy Robert turned his back. Edward frowned, whispering, This story is frighteningly consistent. One afternoon, Ethan dropped by the center. He had just returned from town after quietly searching for some old records. How's Sophia doing? He asked, standing next to Edward in the hallway. Not good. The girl keeps repeating the same traumatic memory, still about the well and her father. Ethan nodded. I think maybe it's true. Edward turned to him. What did you say? Something's very strange about the adoption file. I just checked the name of the person who filed it. The document was signed by someone who died 11 years ago. Edward tightened his grip on the file. If that's the case, the whole adoption process could be forged, and the girl might not be making up her story. That night, Sophia dreamt she was in a white room. She walked barefoot on the cold, tiled floor. In the distance, she heard the sound of dripping water. She approached a round black hole in the center of the floor, the well. As she leaned over, a pale hand surfaced, gripping the edge of the well. Real Dad? Sophia whispered. A face appeared, pale, covered in mud, but with strangely gentle eyes. The face moved as if speaking, but no sound came out. The next morning, she woke up, grabbed paper and pen, and wrote a single line. Real Dad's name is Daniel. Daniel Hayes. Nurse Andrea found the note and handed it to Dr. Foster. The girl never mentioned that name before. Dr. Foster said, Do we have a list of missing persons near Oak Ridge County over the last 10 years? I'll look into it. 2 days later, Ethan held a thin file in his hand, breathing heavily. Daniel Hayes, handyman, 32 years old, mysteriously disappeared in 2018. Worked for Mr. Robert Harlan. Edward shuddered. So that means... It means Sophia could be the victim's child. That weekend, Eleanor came to pick Sophia up after nearly a month of treatment. Do you want to go home? She asked. I have to go back to the well. Aren't you scared? Sophia shook her head. I need to know what happened. I need to know who my real dad was. Eleanor hugged her tightly, but her heart was heavy. The answer was drawing near, and she didn't know if she could bear it. Dad's still waiting for me, right? Time passed. She was no longer a child. Sophia was now 24 years old. She lived alone in a small apartment on the second floor of an old building near the train tracks and worked part-time at a used bookstore downtown called the House of Pages, and the nightmares they had never left her. Sophia, are you okay? The voice startled her. Nora, her co-worker at the bookstore, stepped closer, holding a cup of coffee. Another bad night. Yeah, same old dreams. Nora, do you believe in memories from when you're really little? Nora tilted her head. You mean from when we're toddlers? Of course not. Most people can't remember anything before 3, but I do very clearly. There was a man in a blue shirt, and I know his face. Nora placed a hand on her shoulder. You dreamed about him again. It's not just a dream. I see myself standing at the well looking down. He's down there looking up, his eyes wide, pleading. Every time I wake up, my hands are shaking. My heart's racing. It feels like I abandoned him. Nora squeezed her shoulder gently. Have you ever thought maybe he's your biological father? Sophia looked straight into her eyes. He is. That afternoon, Sophia went home after her shift. She stopped in front of the mirror, staring at herself. Dark circles under her eyes, her cheeks noticeably sunken. She took a deep breath, opened a drawer and pulled out a thin file, a collection of scattered papers she had gathered over the years. The file about the unsolved disappearance in 2018. Daniel Hayes, 32 years old handyman, never found. She pulled out an old photo. The man's face looked exactly like the one that had haunted her dreams for a lifetime. Why can I see your face? Why won't anyone believe me? That night the phone rang. It was Ethan. Are you free, Sophia? What's going on, Uncle? I found a few more old documents in the town archive. You should see them. Sophia went immediately that night. The town council office was dark, except for the desk lamp glowing on Ethan's desk. Here, take a look. Ethan slid a copy of a housing registry from 2017 toward her. Under Robert Harlan's name was another listed at the same address, Daniel Hayes, temporary residence. No contract. This was the handyman Robert once hired. Also, the man reported missing the following year. Sophia froze. He lived in my house, and no one outside your family knew about it. Ethan leaned back in his chair and continued. One more thing, Sophia. Your name doesn't appear in the birth records of any hospital around Oak Ridge County for 2019. It's like you never existed in the system. You think I'm Daniel's daughter. I can't be sure, but if you are, his disappearance might be tied to you. A few days later, Sophia returned to the old house. Robert's house had deteriorated a lot, but he still lived there. Eleanor had moved back to the countryside 2 years ago to care for her elderly mother. Sophia rang the doorbell. Robert opened the door, squinting at her. It's you. I want to come in just for a bit. Robert nodded slowly, avoiding eye contact. The backyard looked exactly as Sophia remembered. Grass grew waist-high. A few bricks poked out from the soil. And at the far corner of the yard, the place where the well used to be was hidden. I want to plant some flowers here, Sophia said, pointing to a patch of dirt near the corner. Robert frowned. What are you trying to do? Just cleaning it up a little. Maybe later I'll grow some organic vegetables. Robert stayed silent, a flash of irritation in his eyes. You can work anywhere except there. Why not? Because I said so. Sophia stepped closer to the garden's edge. Is there something under there? Robert shouted. What are you thinking? I raised you for 20 years, no. You raised a girl no one else dared touch, a girl who knows the truth. Shut your mouth before I... Robert stopped. Sophia's eyes no longer carried the fear of a child. They were cold, determined, and full of silent rage. I'll request permission to excavate that area. I want to know who my real father was, even if I have to dig to the very bottom. Robert said nothing. He turned and slammed the door. Nora came to see Sophia the following night. She was sitting in front of the computer, sketching a map of the backyard. Do you think he's guilty? I believe he is. There's no one else with enough motive to bury my father under that yard. Nora sat down next to her. If that's true, do you think you're ready to face it? Sophia looked out the window. I've lived my whole life under a lie. I don't want to keep doing it. No matter how horrible the truth is, at least it's the truth. Nora held her hand. Then I'll go with you. The next morning, Sophia went to the land office to apply for a permit to excavate the backyard. There she met Martha Simmons, a stern-looking land officer. You'll need a valid reason to apply for excavation, especially since that area once had an old well. By law, you need a geological insurance form. Can you help me? On one condition, tell me the real reason. Sophia stayed silent, then handed over the copy of Daniel Hayes's missing person report and the documents Ethan had found. Martha read them, her expression darkening. This is no longer a private matter. This is potentially a criminal investigation. That afternoon, Robert received an official notice from the town council in order to temporarily seal off the backyard for investigation purposes. He threw the paper to the ground, face burning red. The evening wind blew through the tall grass, and deep beneath the earth something seemed to be waiting to rise. "Are you absolutely sure?" Ethan asked again as they parked in front of Robert's old house. "I'm sure." Sophia nodded, her eyes locked on the backyard. "If I don't do this now, I might spend the rest of my life lost in a dream with no way out." Ethan stayed silent for a moment, then sighed. "I just managed to get a temporary permit. Good for 3 days. But after that, if there's no concrete evidence, the town will be forced to shut it down." 3 days are enough," Sophia replied firmly. "I just need to reach the bottom of the well." That night, Robert sat drinking alone in the living room, the dim light casting his elongated shadow on the wall. The TV was on, playing quietly, but he wasn't paying attention. The door opened. Sophia walked in. Robert looked up. "What are you doing back here?" "I've officially requested to redevelop the backyard. I'm going to dig." "You're crazy." "Maybe the media is starting to call. They smell blood. You think I'm going to let you tear everything down? You've been hiding this for 20 years, haven't you?" Sophia stared at him without blinking. "Back then you thought I wouldn't remember. But I did. Or at least I felt it. The smell of mud, the screams, and then the silence after the shove." Robert shot to his feet, gripping his whiskey glass tightly. "Get out. I'm going to dig. Even if you stand in front of me, I will dig." Robert hurled the glass to the floor. It shattered loudly. Sophia didn't even flinch. She simply turned and walked away. The next morning at 7 a small truck carrying an excavator pulled up to the gate. Ethan got out first, followed by a tall, bearded man named Benjamin Perry, a professional excavator operator Ethan had hired privately from Willow Creek. "Where's the well?" Benjamin asked, pulling his cap down low. Sophia pointed to a patch of tall grass near the corner of the yard. "Over there. It used to be a well. It's buried now." Benjamin chuckled lightly. "I've seen people fill in ponds to forget old stories, but the ground never forgets." He started the excavator. The roar of the engine ripped through the quiet morning air. Curious neighbors gathered along the fence, whispering to each other. "Is that the kid who used to talk nonsense?" "Yeah, that's Sophia." She looked serious now. "Remember the well story? Of course. Who doesn't? But I always thought it was just made up." Sophia heard them all. But she didn't turn around. The digging continued rhythmically. The first layer of dirt revealed rough, cracked stones. By noon, when Benjamin had dug nearly 2 meters down, the machine stopped. "There's something here," he called out. Ethan and Sophia ran over. Beneath the freshly unearthed soil was a circle of old bricks, the mouth of a well crudely sealed with cement. Benjamin knocked on it hard, then said, "This concrete works amateurish. Probably just poured to cover it up and buried over." "Break it open," Sophia said, voice hoarse. Benjamin used a jackhammer to break the concrete. After almost half an hour, a large hole appeared. A wave of damp, foul-smelling air rushed up from the well. "Jesus Christ." Ethan covered his nose. "It stinks." Sophia took a step back. Then she moved closer again, leaning over to look down. "It's so dark," she whispered, "just like in the dreams." Ethan switched on a flashlight and shined it down. The flickering beam caught something round and wet, like bones. "Call the police," Ethan shouted. Benjamin immediately ran to the truck to call. Sophia remained there, eyes locked onto the darkness below. "I think I see hair." "Sophia, step back." Ethan pulled her away. "This is a crime scene now." "No, I need to see him one more time." "You don't even know if it's your father, Sophia." "Wait for forensics." "I don't need to." "I know. I've seen that face for 20 years. In dreams, in tears, in the most terrifying silence." A cold gust of wind blew, carrying the putrid stench up to the back of their throats. The neighbors started to retreat, many covering their noses, coughing. Police arrived about 25 minutes later. 3 patrol cars blocked the entrance, yellow tape cordoning off the yard. Female officer approached and nodded at Ethan. "I'm Lieutenant Carmen Walker, Criminal Investigation Unit. Who made the discovery?" "I did," Sophia replied in a low voice. "I grew up here. I have reason to believe my biological father was murdered and his body hidden down there. Carmen frowned. Do you have any evidence for that claim? Memory, instinct, over 20 years of torment, and a man named Daniel Hayes, who disappeared without a trace from this very house. Carmen studied Sophia for a few seconds, then turned to the forensic team, lowering a long camera into the well. The screen immediately showed a blurry image. Good God, one technician muttered. Carmen leaned in to look. That's human bone, no doubt about it. Ethan exhaled sharply. So she was right. Sophia said nothing. She stood there silently, fists clenched, her eyes red. 2 hours later, part of a body was lifted out with a pulley. The forensic tech gently placed it on a white tarp. Along with it was a tattered piece of clothing, but some patches of blue fabric were still visible. Sophia collapsed to her knees. It's him, that color. Carmen stepped forward. We'll conduct a DNA test. If it's Daniel Hayes, you'll need to provide a sample for comparison. I'm ready. Who was the last resident here? Mr. Robert Harlan, my adoptive father, Sophia said, her voice like steel. And he's the only one who knew this well existed. Carmen nodded, her expression sharp. As night fell, Sophia still hadn't left. She stood near the edge of the well, now tightly cordoned off. The wind blew cold, the smell of damp earth lingering. Ethan draped a coat over Sophia's shoulders. Do you want to be alone? Sophia shook her head. No, I want to stay, to let him know I'm not running anymore. I won't cover my ears, close my eyes, or hide in dreams anymore. Ethan squeezed her shoulder gently. Then you're no longer a child. Sophia looked up at the sky. They used to call me crazy, delusional, haunted. But the real madman is the one who tried to bury a living person as if he never existed. The wind howled again. In the distance, dogs barked. And for a fleeting moment in the night, the face of the man in the blue shirt seemed to appear, not in pain but at peace. Are you a relative of the victim? A woman in a white lab coat, hair tied in a bun, and a stern look approached. Her name badge read, Dr. Martin's forensic examiner. Sophia nodded, her voice low. I'm his daughter. I believe so. Lucy nodded slightly, then motioned for her and Ethan to sit on a bench outside the forensic room. They waited for the DNA comparison results, the final confirmation that the remains from the well belonged to Daniel Hayes, the man who had haunted Sophia all her life. Do you know your blood type? Lucy asked, glancing at the file. Oh, I had a blood test when I was a kid. Then it'll be quick, she said softly. We've already extracted samples from the victim's teeth and preserved hair. It'll just take a few more hours to match. Sophia clenched her fists. Sweat beaded on her forehead, despite the freezing air conditioning. Ethan sat beside her, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. No matter what the results say, you were the one who sought the truth. No one can take that away from you. Outside Robert's house, the criminal investigation team began setting up barricades. Lieutenant Carmen Walker banged on the door with a warrant in hand. Mr. Robert Harlan, police. There was no response. Carmen nodded to her teammates. They broke the lock and pushed the door open. The house was dark, curtains drawn tight. The stench of mold and alcohol filled the air. Carmen carefully made her way through the living room and stopped near the kitchen. Over here, one officer called. Robert sat slumped in a chair, head bowed over the table. On the table was an almost empty bottle of liquor, a half-burned cigarette, and a crumpled piece of paper scrawled with messy handwriting. I didn't kill him. I just did what had to be done. I raised her. I had the right. Carmen gritted her teeth. Take him to the station. Run a blood test and a mental health evaluation. From this point forward, Robert Harlan is under arrest for murder. At the forensic unit, Dr. Martins came out holding a file. Would you like to hear the results now? She asked Sophia, her expression softening slightly. Yes, please. The skeleton from the well is male, estimated to be between 30 and 33 years old. Cause of death: blunt force trauma to the skull resulting in internal bleeding. Estimated time of death around 19 to 20 years ago. The DNA from the remains matches yours with 99.996% certainty. In short, Martins paused, then said firmly, he is your biological father, Daniel Hayes. A heavy silence engulfed the hallway. Sophia gripped the nearby metal railing. Her whole body drained of strength. She gasped for air and collapsed, but she didn't cry. Nora, who had just arrived, rushed to catch her. "I'm okay," she whispered hoarsely. "I just finally saw my father." Lucy placed a hand on her shoulder. "He would be very proud. His daughter didn't forget him." "So it's confirmed?" Ethan asked Carmen as they sat in the car. "Yes, we now have full forensic evidence. The rest is getting Robert Harlan to confess. Do you think he will? Not sure. Men like him often see themselves as victims or as someone who sacrificed for the family." Ethan frowned. "I suspect he didn't kill Daniel out of pure hate. It might have been fear of scandal, fear of losing control, or both. Or maybe because of the child." Sophia was allowed to see her father's remains in a private room. The body had been fully reassembled, covered with a white cloth. At the head of the bed was an old faded blue shirt, stained with mud. Sophia stepped forward, her hand trembling as she gently lifted the edge of the cloth, looking at the worn seams. "I used to see this shirt in my dreams," she whispered, almost talking to herself. "Every night when I was scolded, when I was beaten, when I cried, you were always there." Nora stood beside her, holding her hand. "You called for him 1,000 times. Now he can hear you." A soft breeze drifted through a crack in the door, making the curtain flutter. In that moment, Sophia looked up, her eyes no longer empty like before. Carmen sat across from Robert in the interrogation room. The old man looked exhausted, his hair disheveled, chin covered in stubble. "Mr. Robert, you were present at the scene when Daniel Hayes disappeared. You were the only person living in that house at the time, and his body was found right in the well behind your home." Robert stayed silent. "Did you know Sophia was his biological child?" "I did," he answered hoarsely. "Then why didn't you report it? Why wasn't there a legal birth certificate?" Robert took a deep breath. "Because she was a mistake. You had relations with his lover. When she became pregnant and threatened to reveal it, What did you do?" "She wanted to destroy my family." "You killed him." Robert didn't respond. His eyes drifted toward the ceiling, as if speaking to someone invisible. "I gave her a name, a home. Better than leaving her to die in the street." Carmen narrowed her eyes. "But you took her father away. A name and a roof don't wash the blood from your hands." Robert sneered. "Everyone's guilty of something, even you." Eleanor returned from the countryside when she heard the news. She came to the hospital, finding Sophia in a long, empty hallway. "You're not angry with me, are you?" she asked, eyes brimming with tears. Sophia looked at her, her gaze softening. "You know, when I was little, I used to think you were just afraid of me. Now I understand. You were afraid of the truth." "That's right." Eleanor nodded. "I knew something was wrong, but I was too weak to face it. Now there's nothing left to hide." Eleanor hugged her tightly. "I'm sorry, and I'm proud of you for being brave." Sophia returned to the old house one last time, before the police sealed it off completely. The garden where the well had been dug up was now fenced with steel barriers. She stood there holding a bouquet of white chrysanthemums. Ethan arrived a moment later, silently standing beside her. "Back then, people called me the well girl. Now I just want them to know I am Daniel Hayes' daughter." Ethan patted her shoulder, and the one who pulled the truth up from the mud. Sophia placed the bouquet at the edge of the well. "Dad, I came too late." "But I came." A single tear rolled down her cheek. But this time there was no anger, only a quiet, belated peace. "We now have enough evidence to charge Mr. Robert Harlan with premeditated murder, concealment of a body, and falsification of adoption documents," Lieutenant Carmen Walker announced before dozens of reporters at an emergency press conference at the town police headquarters. Flashes went off constantly. Reporters thrust microphones toward the podium. "What was the motive for the murder, Lieutenant?" one reporter asked. Carmen didn't blink. According to the current investigation, Mr. Robert Harlan had discovered his wife's affair with the victim, Mr. Daniel Hayes, who worked as a handyman in his home. When Daniel became a threat to expose their relationship and the pregnancy, Mr. Harlan killed him to cover it up, then buried his body in the well behind his house. He later forged documents to adopt the baby, who turned out to be Sophia Hayes. Was there any accomplice? Another voice cut in. "We're expanding the investigation, but Mrs. Harlan, Eleanor Simmons, is fully cooperating with the police." In cell number 4, Robert sat motionless, staring blankly through the small barred window. Carmen walked in and sat across from him. "Is there anything you want to say before the case moves to court?" Robert didn't answer. He closed his eyes, leaning his head back against the wall. Carmen opened her notebook and read aloud. On August 12, 2018, Daniel Hayes disappeared from town. You were the last confirmed person to have contact with him. That night, several neighbors reported hearing loud arguing from your house. 3 days later, you returned from an orphanage with a newborn, and Robert opened his eyes. And now we have DNA evidence proving the child was Daniel's daughter. Do you understand what you stole? Robert sneered faintly. An illegitimate kid. A man who dared to blackmail me with that brat by taking his life. Carmen pressed. I gave her a name, a roof. I did good. You murdered her biological father and call that good? Robert stayed silent. Carmen stood up, her gaze cold as steel. Mr. Harlan, you have the right to remain silent, but every second you refuse to speak the truth, you push yourself deeper into darkness. All across Ashland, no one could stop talking about the case. From bakeries to gas stations, from schools to coffee shops, the names Robert Harlan and Sophia Hayes were on everyone's lips. I used to think that girl was crazy, a bakery owner named Katerina Simmons whispered to a customer. Turns out she was right. She saw it all when she was just a little kid. And Mr. Robert, God, I used to respect that man. Another shook their head. He was on the town council for 10 years. Now it's clear. The scary one wasn't the girl talking nonsense. It was the grown man who knew how to cover blood. In her small apartment, Sophia sat with Ethan and Nora. On the table were the case files and an official death certificate. Daniel Hayes, deceased August 12, 2018. Cause homicide. How do you feel? Ethan asked. Sophia stared at her father's name on the paper. Relieved but also empty. Nora squeezed her hand. Your father has his name back. And you have your truth. I used to think I was wrong, broken, unwanted. Now I realize I was the only one who didn't forget him. Ethan nodded. You're the last witness, and the only one brave enough to speak. Sophia looked at Ethan. If it weren't for you, I might have buried myself in dreams forever. No, Ethan said. You would have found him no matter what. That well wasn't deep enough to bury a love like that. The next morning, Carmen received a call from the district attorney's office. We've decided to prosecute Robert Harlan on 3 counts. Murder, concealment of a body, and forgery of adoption documents. The preliminary hearing will be held within 6 weeks. And the child, Sophia Hayes, will be issued a new birth certificate listing Daniel Hayes as her father. The mother's name will remain blank until a final conclusion. Understood? Thank you. Carmen hung up, leaning back in her chair. She stared at Daniel's picture placed at the top of the case file. A gentle man's face with deep, well-like eyes. You didn't disappear, she whispered. That evening, Sophia visited Eleanor. The small house in the suburbs was quiet, warm light spilling from the kitchen. Eleanor was making bean soup, the scent filling the porch. Would you like something to eat? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. Sophia sat down. I didn't come to blame you. I just want to say you raised me. Even though you were scared, even though you stayed silent, you gave me a home. Eleanor choked up. I was wrong. I know if I had spoken up sooner, maybe things would have been different. But if you hadn't taken me in, maybe I wouldn't have survived to find my real father. Eleanor burst into tears, hugging Sophia tightly. Can you forgive me? I never blamed you. I just wish you hadn't stayed silent. Eleanor nodded softly. I promise I'll never stay silent again. A week later, Robert appeared in court for the first preliminary hearing. The courtroom was packed with reporters. On the bench, Sophia sat upright, her eyes never leaving her adoptive father. Do you have anything to say to the victim, Sophia Hayes? The attorney asked. Robert looked at Sophia, his gaze vacant. I used to think you were a burden, but you did better than I ever imagined. Thank you, Sophia replied. Because of you, I know I don't belong in that darkness anymore. After the hearing, Carmen met Sophia outside the courthouse. You know, she said, her eyes sincere, I've handled a lot of murder cases, but I've never seen anyone as brave as you. Sophia nodded. Because I have nothing left to lose. You're wrong. Now you have everything back. Your name, your roots, your truth. Sophia looked up at the sky. Now I just want to live the life my father never got to live. Are you ready? They're waiting downstairs. Nora peeked into the room, smiling. Sophia stood before the mirror, adjusting the collar of a simple white shirt. She turned and nodded lightly. Never ready, but never more at peace than now. Nora stepped closer, fastening the final button. "I'm proud of you, Sophia. A lot of people are..." "It's not because of me," Sophia whispered. "It's because of him." The town hall of Ashland was packed. The soft lighting bathed the rows of audience members, a mix of strangers and familiar faces, all sitting in silence. Above the stage hung a large banner, the Daniel Hayes Foundation, Hope from the Depths. Sophia stepped up to the podium as applause filled the room. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her hand trembling slightly. "A year ago, I was just someone living inside dreams no one believed. A child who grew up surrounded by silence, fear, and whispered gossip behind my back." She paused, her gaze sweeping over the crowd. "But today I stand here not to recount a tragedy, but to begin something new. My father, Daniel Hayes, was a courageous man. He did not deserve to be forgotten in the dark. This foundation is for people like him, for single fathers, for abused children, for anyone ever trapped in a nightmare no one believed." A muffled sob came from the second row. "Nora and I traveled everywhere, meeting hundreds of people. They told us, I thought I was crazy for still remembering my dad in my dreams, or I was beaten for daring to mention a dead name." Sophia pressed her lips together, then nodded. "But no one is crazy for remembering. No one is wrong for wanting the truth, and no one deserves to be buried alive in silence." The applause rose again, longer, deeper. After the ceremony, Sophia sat in the backstage room, just removing her lapel microphone when the door opened. A middle-aged woman entered, holding an old photograph. "Are you Sophia Hayes?" "Yes, ma'am." "And you are?" "I'm Sophia Collins. I used to live across the street from Mr. Roberts' house." She extended the photo. "This is your father. The last picture I ever took of him a week before it happened." Sophia took it. In the photo, Daniel stood beside a bougainvillea trellis, his hair tied back, smiling brightly. "You kept this photo all these years." "There was a time I thought about tearing it up, afraid of trouble, but I couldn't bring myself to. He was so kind. He said goodnight to me every evening. He used to call his daughter Little Sophia." Sophia froze. "What did you say, Little Sophia?" "It was his nickname for you. He would whisper it every night as he carried you inside." "I remember it very clearly." Sophia clutched the photo tightly, her throat constricting. "Thank you. Thank you so much." On the drive home, Nora was at the wheel. "Are you still thinking about him?" she asked. "Robert?" Nora nodded. Sophia stared out the window. "Not much anymore. Now I pity him more than I'm angry. He didn't have the right to take a life, but now he has nothing left and no one believes him anymore. I think that's a punishment heavier than any prison sentence." Nora took her hand silently. The next day, Sophia had an appointment with a lawyer from Oak Ridge County, representing an organization that defends victims of domestic abuse. "We would like to collaborate with the Daniel Hayes Foundation on a new program for abandoned children," said the lawyer, Rachel Benson. "Would you be willing to be the face of it?" "What would I have to do?" "Share your story. Stand up with your real name, your real identity." Sophia nodded. "I no longer want to hide behind a false last name. I am Sophia Hayes, daughter of Daniel Hayes, and I'm not ashamed of it." At the county jail, Robert Harlan sat alone in the visiting room. The door opened. Eleanor entered. Robert smirked. "What are you doing here?" "To look you in the eye. One last time." Robert shrugged. "You don't regret anything?" Eleanor asked. "I regret not cleaning up everything sooner." Robert sneered. "If it weren't for that girl digging up the well." "She's your daughter." "No, she's a shadow I raised to make up for a mistake." Eleanor stood up. "And she's the light, while you are just the shadow." A few months later, Sophia stood in a small square in Boston, participating in a campaign called Preserve the Voice, Restore the Identity. Behind her was a banner printed with hundreds of faces of missing men. She held the microphone. "My name is Sophia Hayes. I was once seen as a delusional child, a crazy girl, a story best forgotten. But I'm living proof that the truth will always find a way to surface, even if buried deep underground." A little girl around 10 years old stood by her mother and walked toward her. "Miss Sophia," she said shyly, "are you the one who found your dad?" Sophia knelt down. "Yes, my father was once at the bottom of a deep well. But now he's here," she said, placing a hand over her heart, "and out there where people no longer turn away." The little girl smiled. "I miss my daddy too." "Where is your daddy?" "I don't know, but now I believe I'll find him." After the event, Sophia received hundreds of letters. One came from a man named Dominic Nolan living in Richmond. "You don't know me, but I saw you on TV. I once hid the fact that my father was beaten to death by his wife. I was scared, but now I've gone to the police. Thank you for being brave for all of us." Sophia folded the letter, her eyes welling up. "You're someone very important, Sophia," Nora whispered, hugging her from behind. "No, I'm just a kid who was abandoned." She smiled, but never abandoned the truth. "Are you sure you don't want to accept that offer?" Nora asked, showing her the letter again with a national television station's logo. "They want to turn the whole story into a documentary. They'll cover all the costs. You just have to tell it exactly as it happened." Sophia remained silent, swirling the teacup in her hand. "I'm afraid I'll remember things. I'd rather forget. But you also said once, the truth shouldn't be buried." Sophia smiled. "And now I'm about to bring it to light." Nora smiled back. "At least this movie won't need a script. Your life already wrote it." 2 months later, the production crew arrived in Ashland. The director was a middle-aged woman with an artistic flair named Patricia, an award winner for her documentaries on domestic violence victims. "I don't want to sugarcoat this story," she said frankly when she first met Sophia. "I want the audience to understand how silence can kill and how courage can save lives," Sophia added. Patricia nodded. "For the opening scene, I want to film right there. The well, the old land that had once belonged to Robert, was now owned by the town." On the plot where the well had been filled in, a small garden was being restored, planted with white chrysanthemums and bougainvillea, Daniel's favorite plants. A grey granite memorial stood engraved with Daniel Hayes, 1986-2018, a father who never gave up on his child. Sophia stood silently in front of the stone. Patricia and the film crew stayed quiet, letting the sounds of the wind, birds, and Sophia's voice fill the microphone. "I found you, Dad." Nora gently squeezed her hand behind her. "And I will live the life you never got to live," she said softly, bending down to place a bouquet of white chrysanthemums. One afternoon, as the sun softened, Eleanor visited the memorial garden. She wore a simple brown dress carrying a basket of seeds. "Nora said I could plant a few things here," she said. Sophia nodded. "What do you want to plant?" "Purple chrysanthemums, the color of forgiveness." Sophia looked down at the soil and nodded softly. "I've already forgiven you, but I haven't forgiven myself." "Then start by sowing the seeds." She smiled. Mother and daughter knelt side by side, turning the soil and dropping seeds into it like gentle tears falling into the past. A few days later, Sophia received a letter from the prisoner Robert Harlan. The paper was yellowed, the handwriting scrawled. "I'm not sorry, because I never thought you should have existed. But if you choose to forgive, then I have no right to refuse. You won. You're his daughter, and he won too." Nora finished reading and frowned. "What are you going to do with it?" Sophia tore the letter in half and threw it into the fireplace. "I don't need an apology to move on. I just need not to look back." The premiere of the documentary, Under the Well, the Story of Daniel and Sophia, was held in Boston. The theater was packed. Many people had to stand along the walls. Patricia spoke first. "This film has no actors, no special effects. Only one person. Once a child silenced by truths no one wanted to believe. And now she speaks for all of us." Sophia stepped onto the stage. The spotlight shone directly on her. Once again, hundreds of eyes turned toward her. "This story isn't just mine. It belongs to everyone who was ever silenced, who was ever called crazy for remembering, for loving someone whose name was forbidden." She looked down at the crowd. Many were wiping away tears. If any of you here carry suffocated memories, know this. Those memories don't make you weak. They make you real, and the truth will always find the light. The applause rolled on like waves. The next morning, an email arrived in Sophia's inbox. "I am Sylvia Allen, Director of the National Center for Justice and Reconciliation. We would like to award you the title Bearer of Truth for your contributions not only to your personal case, but for helping hundreds of other victims find their voice. We would like to include your story in the civic education curriculum for high schools." Nora finished reading and turned to her. "Doesn't this feel like a miracle?" "No, this isn't a miracle," Sophia replied. "This is what should have happened a long time ago, if not for the people who chose silence." 1 year later, the Daniel Hayes Memorial Garden became a regular stop for school buses, carrying high school students from all over. A teacher led a group of students up to the stone memorial, pointing at it. This story is real. And that woman standing over there was once the child who dared to dig up the well, not to find a corpse, but to find the truth. Sophia stood nearby listening without interrupting. A student asked, "Ma'am, do you ever regret it?" "Regret what?" "Digging up the past. Did you ever think maybe it would have been better not to know?" Sophia knelt down and asked, "What's your name?" "My name's Daniel." "Well, Daniel, if tomorrow someone told you that you had no mother, no father, no one who loved you, would you believe it?" Daniel shook his head. "Exactly, because you know you deserve the truth. And if your dad were no longer here, he would still deserve to have his name called out loud." That afternoon, Sophia and Nora sat on a stone bench under the trees, watching the white chrysanthemums sway gently in the breeze. "I remember the first time I heard you say my father is under the well," Nora whispered. "Back then, I didn't believe it, but the look in your eyes made it impossible for me to turn away. Thank you for not walking away. Did you know what your dad once dreamed of?" "No. I read it in the workshop files where he once fixed tools for his aging father. On his job application, he wrote, 'My dream is to open a small cafe with bougainvillea and a reading corner for underprivileged children.'" Sophia froze. "I think we can make that happen," Nora smiled. "You just read my mind." 2 years later, at a small street corner near Union Grove Station, a wooden sign swung gently beneath a bougainvillea trellis. "Daniel's Cafe, where dreams begin." Inside, children sat reading books, laughing brightly. On the wall hung a photo of Daniel Hayes, underneath which was inscribed, "No one is forgotten when their name is spoken with all the heart." Sophia stood behind the counter, pouring tea for an elderly woman who had just come in. Nora sat by the window, typing something on her laptop. "Dad," Sophia whispered silently in her heart, "I made your dream come true. No one is left under the well anymore. Everyone has come back to the surface." Outside the window, bougainvillea petals floated down slowly like an invisible embrace. This story is a powerful reminder that the truth cannot be buried forever. Despite trauma, deception, or being labeled as delusional, the courage to reclaim memory and truth will always bring light. Sophia proved that even an abandoned child can rise, forgive, and transform pain into hope. The deepest lesson is this: only by daring to face the past can a person truly heal and rewrite the future with their own hands. If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing heartwarming stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.